Perceptual constancies. There are mental shortcuts that allow us to quickly and easily recognize objects, even if they are distorted or changed in some way. Our brain, it is able to correct for these changes so that we can see objects as they really are, not just how they appear to us. Our brain is constantly trying to make sense of the world around us. One way it does this by using perceptual constancies. So, before going to the details, please remember to subscribe this channel. Thank you. So, what are perceptual constancies? It refers to the tendency to perceive an object you are familiar with as having a constant shape, size, and brightness, despite the stimuli changes that occur. That is, whatever stimulus changes occur, we will have a tendency to perceive an object that we are familiar with in a constant shape, size, and brightness. It is about the stability in the perception. It means that the object, whatever it is, it appears to have the same size, color, shape, location, etc., regardless of the distance, the perspective, and the lighting. An example of this is our perception of snow, regardless of the environment. Snow appears white to us, whether it is illuminated by the low moonlight or a bright sun. When we see people and houses from the top of the hill, the images will be very small. But we do not get confused by this. We perceive them correctly according to their actual size. The concept of perceptual constancy depends upon numerous factors like imagination, learning, cognitive styles, motivations, habits, expectancy, and experience. So, what is a size constancy? It is the perception of an object as having a fixed size, despite the change in the size of the visual angle that accompanies changes in distance. That is, we have a tendency to see an object as the same size, regardless of the size of its image or our retina. The size constancy, it is a tendency to perceive an object as being the same, whether it is far away or close to us. This is important because if we do not have this ability, then everything would look different depending on where we are standing. For example, when we view a city skyline in the distance, we know that the buildings are very tall, even though when we hold our hand out in front of the skyline, the distant buildings are tiny compared to our hand. But we know that the buildings are very tall and they are huge in size. We perceive the buildings in the background as tall because we know that they are far away and deep in our visual field based on the cues in our environment. So that is size constancy. That is, the size remain constant in our perception, regardless whether the object is far or near to us. Now let's see shape constancy. It refers to the phenomenon in which the perception of the shape of a given object remains constant despite the changes in the shape of the object's retinal image. The shape constancy, it allows the individual to see an object as having a constant shape from different angles. It is important because if we didn't have this ability, the ability of the shape constancy, then what happens? Everything will look different depending on where we are standing or from which angle we are looking to the object. This shape constancy is also known as form constancy. A familiar object, it keeps its perceived shape despite major changes in retinal stimulation due to the changes in its orientation. Let's see the example. Here you can see a clock, a circle-shaped clock, and it is in three different angles. In whichever angle we look at this clock, we see it as a circle only. Sometimes it looks elliptical shape, sometimes a perfect circle, but in any angle, we perceive this as a circle-shaped clock. That is the shape constancy. Next is color constancy. It is the tendency to perceive a familiar object as having the same color under different conditions of illumination. The perceived color of the object that remains constant under varying illumination conditions. For example, the red apple in the image. It will be perceived as red in a well illuminated or a poorly illuminated surroundings. Like if you see a red apple at a midday, when there is the white sunlight is there, or if you see the red apple during the sunset, when the main illumination is red, in both situations you will perceive the apple as a red color. So that is the color constancy. We have a tendency to perceive a familiar object as having the same color. Auditory constancy. We have seen the visual constancies like size, shape and color constancy. Now we will see the auditory constancy. Two different types of auditory constancies are there, and they are music and speech. In music, we will have a correct identification of the musical instrument. For example, consider a violin sound. We are familiar with the sound of violin, and that perception, it remains constant. Whether it changes in the flow, the timbre, the pitch or loudness, whatever changes, we know that it is a violin. So that is the music constancy. Next is speech. It is the idea that when we listen to somebody talk, we can recognize the vowels, the consonants as constant and the same, despite any changes in the dialect, the tempo, acoustics, or general environment. So whatever changes happen in the dialect, tempo, whatever it is, we can recognize the vowels, consonants, etc. So that is the speech constancy. Now let's have a quick recap on what we have learned. We have learned what is perceptual constancy. It helps to explain why it is we see things in a certain way, regardless of how they are. It also helps us to keep our external environment ordered and predictable. And it helps us to feel a sense of safety. We have seen the visual constancies like size, shape and color, and the auditory constancies like music and speech. Hope you like this video. Please like, share and subscribe. Thank you and keep smiling.